Dave, so what do you think of Mark Cuban? He obviously supported Harris, and he was out there very vocally supporting her. It didn't work, so why does he think he's so great at politics?
I asked, actually, the producers in advance of the segment to pull up an image. Could we pull up an image that I requested? Because
wow.
I have a theory that the more Mark Cuban goes into the leftist idea, jumps into the liberal pool, the more he starts looking like an MSNBC lesbian. Cuban needs to go away, like all of these people need to go away. If you're an old school liberal, you have a home. It's called the Republican Party. It's what Trump has done. It's RFK, it's Tulsi, it's guys like me. Everybody that loves America, you're welcome to be a Republican right now, and let the Democrats... That's the truth. That's why they're applauding. And let the Democrats have the crazies and the thick rim glasses, people.
It's a crazy world, crazy world. Somebody's gotta have to save you. It's a crazy world. It's a crazy world. Somebody's gotta have to save you.
All right, guys, I'm back in business. The name is still Dave Rubin. The show is still the Rubin Report. It's December 9th, 2024. We are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and Locals post-game show, rubinreport.locals.com. And you may have known I was gone for the latter half of last week. On the weekend, I was in New York for a couple days. Obviously, it did Gutfeld, a couple other Fox hits. And then I jumped over to crazy Los Angeles, from whence I came. And I visited my friend Dennis Prager. Most of you probably know, I haven't said anything about it on the show, but it is public knowledge. Dennis Prager, who has been just a monumental influence in my life professionally and personally, and he's become just a good friend and he's like a bonus uncle to me in some ways. He slipped in the shower about a month ago and has done some pretty severe damage. So I went to his back and his neck. So I went to visit him in Los Angeles, and I don't want to share anything that's not publicly being shared by the PragerU folks, but it was important and good to see Dennis, and I'm wishing him well, and I'm looking forward to having him back. And then on a more fun note, I got to do two really, really fun things that we'll show you pictures of real quick. First off, on Friday night, I had dinner with a true hero of mine who I had never met before. That's David Zucker, who is the creator of Airplane and Naked Gun and Scary Movie, writer, creator, like just an absolute Hollywood legend. And we hit it off. That was my one-time favorite restaurant in LA, Boa. But we sat there over many cocktails and just went back and forth on funny lines. And it was just great. And then you may have seen this on the Twitter already. I sat courtside for the first time in my life last night. And you might recognize the guy I'm next to over there. Yes, that is Bill Maher. And as people asked us at the game and in my Twitter mentions and everything else, yes, you can be friends with someone that you don't see everything eye to eye with. And it's just okay. But it was, putting aside Bill, it was so, I've never sat, I don't watch current games anymore because it's gone so woke and all of that stuff. But I love basketball, as you know, and it was just so cool to sit courtside and you can hear the trash talking and the squeaking of the sneakers, and it was awesome. And the Lakers won. And then at halftime, we went into the private area there, chatted with James Worthy, and then Byron Scott came up to us, Lakers legend Byron Scott. He says hi to Bill, and then he's like, "Who's this?" And Bill's like, "That's my boyfriend." And now Byron Scott thinks that I'm having an affair with Bill Maher. We'll see what happens with that. Anyway, let's do a show today. We got a great show. So I took the red eye last night. I've basically been up all night long. I'm a little cracked out. We'll see what happens. And the theme of the show, I think, is perfect for Dave Rubin, cracked out Dave Rubin, which is you either love America or you hate America. It's sort of what that cold open was about. We've got the wide tent now. It's fighting the machine. We're seeing the world really be reordered. Not only is there all this crazy stuff happening in the Middle East and in Syria, which we'll get to more tomorrow, but there's a reordering of our cultural norms, our political norms, and the teams are being reordered right in front of our faces. And it's not just here in America, it's literally all over the world. So let's start with a short clip of a short woman, Greta Thunberg, a rather unpleasant, let's say, woke climate activist who has really been unmasked to show herself as a true sort of Marxist authoritarian. This is just a 13-second clip of her in Germany, and listen to what she says, because I want to we're going to do a lot of sort of comparing and contrasting of the radicalness of the modern left versus pretty much everybody else. So here is example A.
And Israel.
All right, so that's very edgy, very powerful stuff right there from this 13-year-old climate activist, right? Or however, how old is she? She's 21? In my mind, she's 13. It doesn't even matter. But okay, that's very edgy. You can be in Germany and say fuck Germany and say fuck Israel, right? Israel, which has done more to make the desert bloom and created drip irrigation and okay, fine, blah, 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 desalinization plants, etc. But yes, you can join the jihadists and the people who want to destroy the West, because there's nothing that Hamas and the jihadists love more than climate change and Green New Deals. But the real idea there is that what the left has become worldwide right now is anti-Western. It has become anti-free speech. It has become anti-individual. It has become anti all of the good things that led us to kind of where we are at right now. Now, I want to contrast sort of the radical progressive idea set that maybe you would say is summed up by Greta Thunberg. Now I want to show you a guy by the name of Dr. Alex Karp. Alex Karp is the CEO of Palantir. We've showed you a couple clips of this guy. He looks like the guy who created the, what was the world called in Ready Player One? What did they call the world? The Odyssey? What was it called? Help me here. In the world that in the movie Oasis, thank you. He looks like the guy who created Oasis in Ready Player One, but he is the CEO of Palantir. He is a liberal, but he is an old school liberal. He voted for Joe Biden. He even voted for Kamala Harris, but don't prejudge him too much, because now listen to the guy make some sense.
Americans are the most loving, God-fearing, fair, least discriminatory people on the planet. And they want to know that if you're waking up and thinking about harming American citizens, or if American citizens are taken hostage and kept in dungeons, or if you're a foreign power sending fentanyl to poison our people, something really bad is going to happen to you and your friends and your cousins and your bank account and your mistress and whoever was involved. And you know, when Americans are spending $1 trillion on defense, what I want and what I think my peers want is, why are these people keeping our citizens hostage, torturing our people, attacking our allies, maligning us in what was once called the United Nations, basically a discriminatory institution against anything good? We need to stand up, and those people need to be scared. And that's why this conference is so important, because we have the best products in the world, and we cannot have parity. Our adversaries do not have our moral compunction. If it's even, they will take advantage of our niceness, kindness, our desire to be at home in Nebraska or New Hampshire or wherever we live in our peaceful environments. And they need to wake up scared and go to bed scared. And if you give that to the American people will go back and say, and honestly, probably shouldn't say this is why I thought the Democrats were going to lose the election, why they did, because people want to live in peace. They want to go home. They do not want to hear your woke pagan ideology. They want to know they're safe. And safe means that the other person is scared. That's how you make someone safe. And the average American person understands this. Unfortunately, many of the intellectually captured institutions, funneled and intellectually owned by the Berkeley faculty, do not. And that's what they want. It's sure as hell what I want. And that's what Palantir and all the people in this room, I hope, we're here to serve the American people. And my version of service is the soldiers are happier, the enemies are scared, and Americans go back to enjoying the fact that we're the only one with a real tech scene in this country, and we're going to win everything. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's how I see it, and that's how most Americans see it. Now, interestingly, again, I'm telling you not to prejudge there, because I thought it was worth noting that he voted for Biden and for Harris. So let's just put aside the voting portion of the guy for a moment. But everything he said there is right. There are good guys and there are bad guys. We are allowed to say it. Not all cultures are created equally. There are people who like to, I was going to say mutilate children's genitals, but that's we have here, but also across the world, there are people who like to mutilate women's genitals. Also not good. There are just things that are different about different societies. And for some reason, we in the West over the last 5 decades probably have largely forgotten what has made us better, what has made us the dream of generations before us. So he's absolutely right. We want competent government that makes sure that we are safe so that we, the people, can go ahead and pursue our dreams, right? That would be pretty freaking good. And that used to be the liberal position. So that's why I'm showing you a completely crazy, radical, woke progressive who seems to be the future of the Democrat Party. Then I'm showing you someone who, albeit voted the wrong way, gets it as a liberal. And now I want to jump over. You may remember about a week and a half ago, I was in Vegas for a day. I did the Iced Coffee Hour podcast, and I was talking to the guys about what old school liberalism is, how I kind of woke up, and I want to use that as a little bit of a framework for where we're going here. I was always kind of a liberal growing up. I'm from New York. I was just sort of like a New York old school liberal, which is very, very different, as I'm sure you guys know, from what the modern sort of framing of what a liberal is. I was liberal in that, like, I didn't really care who you married. I didn't care what you smoked. In some sense, I'm still, at least I consider myself begrudgingly pro-choice. But that was sort of when things work, you can kind of be liberal. And that was what most people were in America at the time. I'm a child of the 80s. I'm 48. Like, that was really how things were. And then conservatives were thought of as a little more conservatives, kind of, were more about business and wars. And then there were a couple moments along the way that kind of broke me. The most famous one that I think became way bigger than me was when Sam Harris was on Real Time with Bill Maher with Ben Affleck, and Affleck was on, and people think he maybe was getting a little juiced up for Batman at the time. And they started discussing radical Islam, and Sam was trying to explain that you have to be able to criticize ideas without being bigoted towards people. And Affleck just jumped all over Sam Harris, who's a very soft-spoken atheist. He was on the show to talk about mindful meditation, basically, a new book he had about that. And Bill Maher, who was a lifelong liberal, live and let live kind of thing. And basically he called them gross and racist. That was the line. And I was watching it. I remember watching it live that night. And I was watching it and I thought, holy shit, this right now, what was happening right in front of me, this is what I've been trying to formulate in my head that I knew was wrong. That the liberals, the progressives, somehow were completely unable to separate how you should be able to talk about ideas, criticize ideas, without being bigoted towards people. Okay, so I know that many of you know that Bill Maher, Sam Harris, Ben Affleck story. I know that wake-up moment wasn't just for me. It was literally for millions and millions of people worldwide. For those of you that have been watching this for a while, and that were playing the game on Twitter at the time, when that clip happened originally, and that's about 7 years ago now, something like that, it just caught fire because it was just so damn obvious that the progressives were no longer defending the liberal principle of free speech and open inquiry and being able to sit across the table from somebody and respectfully disagree. So now I just want to show you one more clip from that podcast, because as you know, the liberals of today, the true liberals, I believe, have a home in the Republican Party, as I said in that cold open Gutfeld clip. And I think they have no home with the modern Democrats anymore. And that's largely because of a certain orange man. And then really what happened was I started talking to some conservatives. I started talking to Larry Elder. There was a very famous moment we had. I started talking to Glenn Beck, Ben Shapiro, all of these guys. And what I found was, even though I disagreed with them about some stuff, there was an awful lot of just, live and let live. America's kind of good. Like, let's see if we can talk this stuff out. And really all I was getting on the other side was scorched earth. So anyway, to kind of get that to exactly where your question is, this new thing that's happening right now, I don't really describe it as conservative as much as it's just pro-America, right? Because Tulsi is definitely not a conservative. Tulsi is definitely pro-choice. And, the war thing has now flipped because the Democrats have become the party of war. But RFK is definitely not a traditional conservative. But what's bringing all these guys together, it's basically a love for America, and it's a love for free speech, and hopefully a restoration of those things. Okay, so again, for those of you that have been watching for a long time, I'm kind of recapping things here, but now we're going to bring this into where the modern Democrat Party is and where the Republican Party is going. And I think it's a nice moment right now, as we're in this in-between phase, when we know Donald Trump's going to be president, but he's not president just yet. There's still really a lot of room to bring around people who did not vote for Trump and show them, boy, do you see? that in the 5-6 weeks since Donald Trump got elected, the world is sort of ordering itself correctly. There isn't this screaming that they're going to come after women or abortion or the gays or anything else. That the wide tent thing, which is now clearly within the Republican Party, is way bigger than just conservatism itself. It's not to say conservatives have nothing to conserve. They damn well do. But now there's room for more people, and that is the most pro-America thing a political party could possibly have. We'll have more on that in a moment. Let me talk to you about Rumble Premium before we get to it. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions around COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Of course, Rumble did not. They held the line. They're attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They're attacked in corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France. They're attacked by brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove free speech while Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers alone. They don't get much of it. So watching our show is the number one way we can ask for support from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with promo code Rubin when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium/Rubin and use code Rubin. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we're just happy if you watch us right here on Rumble. So if the basic premise so far is that old school liberals, which most of us were, if you were a child of the 80s, 90s, even to early 2000s. That's what culturally most people were in America. If the idea is that old school liberals were able to have conversations, were able to agree to disagree and sit with people who were a little bit different, let's contrast that to what the Democrat Party has become, because we may all want them dead and buried and their bones to be 6 feet under like Freddy Krueger, but it will reconstitute itself. And as wide and great as the Republican Party may be becoming, it's always going to have an opposition. And perhaps, healthy opposition maybe is the best thing in a pluralistic society. But let's jump over to Tim Walz. He was not someone we're going to have to mention a lot going forward in the future in terms of relevance, but he was Kamala's VP choice, or whoever was in charge of Kamala. They chose Tim Walz from Minnesota. And here he is doing a postmortem on what happened to them. And you tell me, does he get it yet or nah?
I think we're going to have to understand what type of leadership do they want. We were pledging to be inclusive. We were pledging to bring people in. Donald Trump has said that isn't what he wants. And so if that's what America's leaning towards, I guess for me, it's to understand and learn more about America, because I thought that they were going to probably move towards a more positive message.
God, a worse group of people could not have lost when you look at her and him. I mean, it's like we were pledging to be inclusive and bring people in. Can you possibly think of anything that means less than that? It's drivel. We were promising to be inclusive. So what? Meaning you were going to hire more trans people who weren't qualified to be health secretaries and more cross-dressers to be in charge of nuclear armament? Like, is that what you mean? Or you were like... And actually, it is what you mean. We were going to be inclusive. So the thing that we were going to care about the most when bringing people in was their genitals and their skin color. Everyone's over it, tough guy. That's number one. Also, bring people in. Well, I don't know. Donald Trump's bringing in Pete Hegseth. He's a people. So what? It just means nothing. But the implication, of course, is that Americans are bigots. We're bigots and racists, and somehow the white people got what they want. Now, I want to do another little contrast moment here, because in 2019, so 5 years ago, Pete Buttigieg, who was then the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, nobody really knew who he was, but there were some grumblings that, he was going to run for president, and maybe he was sort of like the new white gay Obama. And he went on Bill Maher's show, and listen to him making the case for what Democrats had to do. This is 2019, and contrast it in your own mind to 2024.
I mean, he's fat, you're thin. He's old, you're young. You went to Afghanistan, he dodged the draft, right? There's a lot of
We're very different people.
You're very different. So how do you beat him?
Well, I think that's part of the idea. I mean, look, the paradox here is in order to beat Trump, we got to run a campaign that's not all about Trump. the more it's about him, I think folks at home are going to be saying, okay, who's talking about me? Don't get me wrong, you got to punch back when you're punched, you got to correct lies when he tells lies, but then we got to move on very quickly to how our ideas actually cash out in everyday life, because when we do that, we win.
That's why you guys lost, right? Like, that's it right there. We have to run a campaign that's not all about Donald Trump. Kamala and this Democrat thing, it was all about Trump. It was Trump, 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 Trump. No matter what they asked about her and her policies, I'm a middle-class girl and Trump, 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 Trump. And then, of course, what Pete said is we have to defend our ideas. We have to show people that our ideas are better, et cetera, et cetera. Ironically, at that very moment, within like a month of that clip right there, I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago on the show, we tried to get Pete on the show, and his campaign manager agreed publicly on Twitter, and then the wackadoodle base went after him. You're going to talk to far-right crazy Dave Rubin? And then he backed out. So he himself became a perfect avatar for exactly what the Democrat Party is. And by the way, subsequently in the 5 years of Pete being part of this administration and everything else, it's like, what has he stood for? What ideas have you pushed for besides DEI, besides diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that we're racist and America's not great? What ideas are coming out of the Democrat Party? And actually the answer is jack shit. Interestingly, this is wild. This was going viral over the weekend. This is a campaign manager for Kamala Harris going on a podcast and talking. Now they're openly admitting that they really just never planned to have an open primary. And I think you'll find the reasoning quite interesting.
We had 107 days, and I know people don't like that time frame, that number, but to open up a Democratic primary, you would have had black women, who were the strongest voting bloc for Kamala Harris, be highly upset if it was not Kamala Harris. You would have had someone starting with zero infrastructure. I hear your concern, and I'm not saying that primaries are not important and open primaries are important.
What a crazy thing to say. So they fool their own base, pretending that Biden's okay, then it doesn't work anymore. And they install this woman while saying that they're the ones saving democracy. And then basically what he's saying is we pander to the black women. And by the way, calling them the most important part of the base or whatever phrase of the day they're using, it's completely ridiculous. I mean, more white women voted for Kamala Harris than black women. If you want to whittle everybody down to their vaginas, like that is true. There are more white women in the country if you want to whittle everyone down to their vaginas. Put that on your Hinge app or what's a dating app? That's a dating app, right? Or what's the main dating app where you swipe? Tinder. Tinder. Put that on your Tinder. I whittle girls down to their vaginas. But it's interesting because they're basically like, yeah, we didn't have to do democracy. We didn't want to upset black women. Well, that's not really how democracy works. But by the way, in some sense, what he's saying there is actually true, because you remember just a couple months ago when the fight was about, do we have a primary or not? Sonny Hostin was like, no primary because black women will be pissed. So that's the way that they have decided to go. And that is the way that the modern Democrat Party and the left really all over the world seems to continue to want to go. We will have more on that in just a moment. But first, let me talk to you about TWC Maha. The deep state strikes back with a clear message to create nuclear war as Trump transitions into office. It's confirmed NATO fires missiles into Russian territory, forcing Putin to the brink of nuclear war. We haven't been this close to World War III since the Cuban Missile Crisis, and folks, Putin does not mess around. If global disaster strikes, are you prepared? 90% of medications come from overseas. You need to cover the bases for your family's medical needs and prepare for any type of medical catastrophe. And the wellness companies' emergency kits are your best defense against the unexpected. Packed with life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, amoxicillin, and more, these kits combat bacterial infections, staph, bite wounds, UTIs, strep throat, and respiratory illnesses. Each kit includes their medical board-approved guidebook that walks you through how to treat different emergency scenarios. Ordering your prescription emergency kit is easy and fully digital. Answer a couple questions after checkout, and your kit is delivered to your front door. Don't wait until a disaster strikes. Act now by heading over to twc.health/Rubin and use code Rubin to save up to $60 off plus free shipping. Again, that's twc.health/Rubin and use code Rubin to save up to $60 off plus free shipping. Kits available only in the US of A. All right, so with a group of people that seemingly are left with, oh, we only care about your genitals, what you're going to find, and we're not willing to talk to anybody else about anything. What you're going to find is that virtually everything that they spit out is going to be pretty terrible. let's use an example of Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, we've played a bunch of clips of him over the last month or two. I find the guy pretty boring at this point. It's kind of depressing because he was the apprentice, really, of Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan, the great astronomer and professor and science communicator. And if you have never seen him, we should play some clips of him on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson from way back when. It was a little before my time, but I've watched a lot of them. And the guy, as I've mentioned before, he wrote something, probably at least a dozen books, but his one work of fiction was the movie Contact with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey. It's an absolutely phenomenal movie. It might be my favorite movie, actually. Anyway, Neil deGrasse Tyson was supposed to be the next Carl Sagan, and instead he's become the next sort of one-trick woke pony. Here he is explaining to Piers Morgan, still, he did this a couple weeks ago with Bill Maher, it was completely ridiculous. Here he is still saying that females should compete against men in sports.
What I said was, the idea of creating categories within a sport, splitting them in the example I gave, which I just made it up, like hormone ratios, is not fundamentally weird compared to dividing wrestlers by weight.
No,
because
it is.
the only
It is.
reason why you
I'm
do
gonna
this
respond.
is to make an interesting contest.
No, Neil, you're wrong.
And so you said Floyd Mayweather fight. Hold on.
You're
you
wrong.
said Floyd Mayweather.
You're not
fighting
allowing for
and
the superior male biology when it comes to lung capacity, stamina, to body mass, to muscle mass, all those things. If you just take one criteria of hormones, you're not allowing all that. I'll give an example. Caitlyn Jenner, who obviously... hang on. I'm going to finish my point. Let me finish my point. Caitlyn Jenner was an Olympic male decathlon gold medal winner. Caitlyn is a big golf fan. And when she started playing golf after she transitioned, she was allowed to play off the women's tees, which are 50 yards further than the men's tees. And she quickly realized that she was still smashing it 300 yards down, and obviously was then beating all the women that she played. So she now plays back off the male tees because her biology is that of a man. And I feel that that was the most honest way to deal with it. I also feel that if you want to have a separate category, have a trans category. Or have trans women compete against men, which is their biology. Isn't that the scientific way to resolve this?
Okay, so the reason I'm showing you that clip is, first off, there's a couple of reasons. Look, we have this elite class. We all now know about this elite, overeducated class that they want to over-explain everything, and where it's just like, no, boys are not girls, girls are not boys. By the way, Piers is doing something interesting there, which I also try to do, and I think would be the old school liberal position, which is you don't deny biological reality, right? Caitlyn Jenner, Bruce Jenner, is a male. Now, he chooses, and this I'm saying he for a moment, he chooses to live as a woman. Now, Caitlyn Jenner, who seems to treat other people with respect and who I've met a few times, I don't have a problem when I've been with her, so I get it can get a little confusing or whatever. I will say Caitlyn, or I would say she if I was introducing, here she is, something like that. Because respect is a two-way street, but don't demand that I deny biological reality and then demand that I use your pronouns, et cetera, et cetera. Now, okay, you might be saying, Dave, well, we've done enough with this gender stuff in sports. Why is this relevant to what's going on politically all over the world right now? Well, one of the senators on the Republican side, who suddenly has become a bit of a thorn in Donald Trump's side, is Joni Ernst from Iowa. It looks like she is not going to vote to confirm Pete Hegseth. It's up in the air still, but she seems to be the one that is really hanging this up on the Republican side. Let's jump back to her talking about transgender talent in the military.
So the example of transgender people serving in our military, we have transgender people serving in our military. They will bleed red just as the rest of us. But I also take a stance that we should not be integrating transgender people into certain situations where it does make, if you have a female barracks and you have a transgender woman who has not transitioned, we shouldn't make the rest of the unit uncomfortable about that setting. There are certain accommodations we can make for that transgender individual. But if they bring value to our unit, if they have specialties that we can use, especially if we want to maintain an all-volunteer force, we want to bring that talent into our services. And I know that's controversial.
Okay, now it's interesting, lady. because you're partly right that if there are people with very specific talents, very specific services that they provide, a certain knowledge of something, that we should not care about immutable characteristics. We shouldn't care about their genitals or their skin color or anything else. Now, the problem, of course, comes that once these people are in, now, first off, trans in many ways has become an ideology. So usually these people come with all sorts of other bad ideas attached to them, right? That's what that god-awful, the gays had the rainbow flag and then they mucked it up with the triangle and the brown and the thing and the other thing. It comes with a political identity on top of it. So you might want to, it might be a perfectly fine position to say, okay, we only want to hire people and bring in people into the military based on merit. But once we start confusing things like the barracks and the showers and everything else and have to make special accommodations for people for this, that, or the other thing, then you're going to have to make all sorts of accommodations for a whole bunch of other things. But now let's connect this to the other side, because what she said there, we can argue it back and forth. I don't think she's being, there's nothing over the top in what she's saying, but there's a debate to be had, and you can do that on the right now. Now let's jump over to the Supreme Court hearing from the last couple of days. There's a couple cases that are up in the air right now. And here is audio of Ketanji Brown Jackson. Ketanji Brown Jackson, who quite literally, it's not my words, it's Joe Biden's, just like he chose Kamala because she's a black female. He chose Ketanji Brown Jackson because he wanted a black female on the Supreme Court. By the way, that does not in and of itself mean that you are qualified. I'm fairly certain she isn't, because listen to how she talks about the ban on minor sex changes, and listen to what she compares it to. This is completely and utterly ridiculous.
Being drawn by the statute. That was sort of like the starting point. The question was whether it was discriminatory because it applied to both races and it wasn't, necessarily invidious or whatever. But, as I read the statute here, the case here, the court starts off by saying that Virginia is now one of 16 states which prohibit and punish marriages on the basis of racial classifications. And when you look at the structure of that law, it looks in terms of, you can't do something that is inconsistent with your own characteristics. It's sort of the same thing. So it's interesting to me that we now have this different argument, and I wonder whether Virginia could have gotten away with what they did here by just making a classification argument the way that Tennessee is in this case.
I'm sorry, lady, that is so effing bananas. She is comparing mutilating underage children, bans on underage sex changes, to interracial marriage. I am not a constitutional lawyer, but we have things in the Constitution like individual rights and equal protection under the law, right? Those are things that you could refer to in the Constitution to make the argument that trans people as adults should be able to live however they want or have whatever surgeries they want or anything else. But those would also be the arguments that would make us have interracial marriage, right? You as a consenting adult in the United States should be able to marry whoever you want, whatever their genitals are, whatever their skin color is or anything else. But to compare that to mutilating a child's genitals, to literally chemically castrating a child, drugging them, everything else, like... But again, this should not surprise us. The left, because they were not willing to get us to where we started, they were not willing to have difficult conversations, and at times where they were not that difficult. We should have been able to have these conversations 10 years ago. We've been left with a bunch of people who are not qualified and who are radical activists in positions that they should never have. Example number 2 on that one, well, here's ACLU lawyer Chase Strangio, or Strangio maybe, which would be perfect, explaining that 2-year-olds should have sex changes.
I would say is nobody has to provide this medication to adolescents. These are not doctors being forced to provide this medication. These are doctors who are wanting to treat their patients in the best way that they know how, based on the best available evidence to us. And these are young people who may have known since they were 2 years old exactly who they are, who suffered for 6-7 years before they had any relief. And what's happening here, it's not the kids who are consenting to this treatment, it's the parents who are consenting to the treatment. And as a parent, I would say when our children are suffering, we are suffering. And these are parents who love their children, who are listening to the advice of their doctors, of the mainstream medical community, and doing what's right for their kids. And the state of Tennessee has displaced their judgment.
All right, so that guy is actually a girl, now is a guy. I don't feel the need to treat him or her with the respect that I would treat, say, a Caitlyn Jenner with, because he is calling for the castration of underage children. at 2 years old, you would know you were trans. That is so off the charts. I don't even know how to comment on it. I am the father of two 2-year-olds. The idea that they would somehow think that they are not in the body they are supposed to be, that could even enter their brain. Anything at that level, anything even remotely close. Now, is it possible a 2-year-old that's a boy might want to play with more girly related things than, say, boy related things in a stereotypical fashion? Of course, but that doesn't mean you chemically castrate them, you freaking weirdo. You know, Justin can name basically every Transformer, like a Megatron, Starscream, Soundwave, Bumblebee, Jazz. Give me another Transformer. Come on. Optimus Prime, that was the easy one. All right. But some Democrats are waking up, and you know what's happening to them? They're basically leaving the Democrat Party, and they're becoming the part of the wide tent thing I've been asking for. I've got one on the other side, but first, 1775 coffee. Guys, Peaberry coffee isn't your average bean. It's coffee's best kept secret. Only 5% of coffee beans grow as pea berries, making them denser, more flavorful, and packed with bold energy to kickstart your mornings. This isn't just coffee, it's a richer, more powerful brew. 1775 Peaberry coffee is for those who refuse to compromise. Each bean is hand-picked at high altitudes for that smooth, powerful kick you need to fuel your day. No corporate crap, no woke nonsense, just the best coffee you'll ever taste. And it's not just about the coffee, it's about what it stands for. Whether it's Peaberry, dark or medium roast, or the new mushroom blend. 1775 coffee is about quality, freedom, and living with purpose. Head on over to 1775coffee.com, grab your Peaberry, and join the coffee revolution. Use code Rubin to save 15%. Your mornings deserve better. Brew Rebellion. Okay, so I showed you the clip earlier of one of my wake-up moments, or referencing one of my wake-up moments was that moment on Real Time with Sam Harris and Ben Affleck. Now, liberals, the modern liberal, as you know, might be you watching this right now, might be a family member, might be a friend, are all going through some degree of this. A lot of people woke up post-October 7th. A lot of people woke up because of the border stuff, like whatever the issue might be. One of the people who seems to be waking up right now is lifelong Democrat and current mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. He has been on the wrong side of almost everything, but not absolutely everything. Then the DOJ started looking into him, and he seems to be waking up right now. And he's realizing, and I do sense that he's actually gotten a mirror. I'm always telling these people to get a mirror and look at it. I think he's starting to realize that his sanctuary city ideas and the way he hasn't backed the police and everything else has caused a huge problem in New York City. Well, guess what? Suddenly, he is willing to work with the Trump administration on cleaning up the city and getting rid of the illegals. And that includes working with new border czar, the man that I always say is right out of Casting 101 if you were looking for a border czar, Tom Homan.
Those who are here committing crimes, robberies, shooting at police officers, raping innocent people, have been a harm to our country. I want to sit down and hear the plan on how we're going to address them. Those are the people I am talking about, and I would love to sit down with the border czar and hear his thoughts on how we're going to address those who are harming our citizens.
You're open to that?
Open to?
To hearing what their plan is to deport some of these folks, and you think the city, in some circumstances, should cooperate with ICE.
Let me. You know what's interesting? And I was talking to the team the other day. I want you to all go back and Google Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Google what they said about those who commit crimes in our city and what they said in our country. They said those who commit crimes need to get out right away. That was their position. So this is not a new position, because in the state of in the era of cancel culture, no one's afraid to be honest about the truth. Well, cancel me, because I'm going to protect the people of this city. And if you come into this country, in this city, and think you're going to harm innocent New Yorkers and innocent migrants and asylum seekers, this is not the mayor you want to be in the city under.
Okay, again, I'm not saying you let the guy off the hook fully. He needs the mirror. He needs to look at it. I sense he's going down that path. He's realizing, oh, it isn't a good idea to allow illegal criminals to smoke crack and sell fentanyl and rape our women. Not great idea. Like, the bar isn't set too high to wake up as a liberal, right? You just have to have some basic thing that anyone used to believe 20 years ago pop in your brain, and next thing you know, you're a crazy conservative. That's how it works. But the fact that he is now saying, I will work with these guys, I will work with Trump. I will work with Homan. In some ways, it's the ultimate get out of jail free card for him. He fucked up New York City at an extraordinary level. Go to New York City. You will get a contact high in Midtown. I promise you. It smells like weed and piss. You will get high one way or another. That was disgusting. That was really disgusting. I'm just getting too old. Like, I don't want to smell weed when I'm walking through the city anymore. Like, I just don't. But he messed up that city. Everyone knows it. But he has a chance to redeem himself. And his redemption, ironically, will come through the Republican Party, a party that he's been rallying against. Anyway, he continued here to talk about the common ground that he can find because, I don't know, having some basic sense of law and order on the streets, I think we could all get on board that, or at least the sane ones can.
I think there's some common grounds here. From what I'm hearing from the border czar, he's concerned about public safety the way I am, and New Yorkers are concerned about public safety.
So what's the common ground?
Well, public safety. What is it going to take to ensure that we're safe? What is it going to take to continue the rich spirit of the American people allowing immigrants in? What is it going to take to secure our border? And what is it going to take to have a real comprehensive immigration reform?
Should there be more cooperation with ICE agents, though?
Yes, I do believe that. I stated this prior to the election. And this is what gave me, Marcia. People are saying, okay, after the president-elect is coming in, Eric is now saying different things. No, I was saying this prior to the election. I was saying those who are committing crimes in our city must be addressed, and we should change the current sanctuary city law to address that issue.
All right, so look, he hasn't fully done the mirror thing, obviously, right? Because he's going, oh, well, people are saying I changed my tune post-election. But dude, either way, you were pushing for a sanctuary city situation in New York City. So a lot of this still falls at your very fancy shoes. So you do have to acknowledge that at some point if you really want to jump in on what is going to be the most successful political movement probably in our lifetimes. Like, you got to acknowledge it. I think in a little bit more of a real way. But I know it doesn't happen overnight, so we'll take it. Now I want to connect this to something else happening in New York City that's actually on the good side of things for a moment. This is a tweet from Benny Johnson. Breaking: the Manhattan District Attorney has officially filed to dismiss Daniel Penny's manslaughter charge. And we've got some info here on the Daniel Penny case, which is just so wild and a perfect example of how the media has they make you hate the good guys and love the bad guys. This is from the New York Post. On May 1st, 2023, Daniel Penny, a 24-year-old Marine veteran, fatally restrained Jordan Neely, a 30-year-old homeless man, on a New York City subway train. Neely was reportedly acting erratically and making threats, prompting Penny to place him in a chokehold for several minutes. Neely lost consciousness and was later pronounced dead at the hospital. The incident was captured on video and sparked widespread debate about public safety and mental health. Penny was charged with second-degree manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. During the trial, the jury was unable to reach a consensus on the manslaughter charge, leading to its dismissal. Deliberations continue regarding the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide, which carries a potential sentence ranging from probation to 4 years in prison. Now, look, just my personal opinion on this is that I hope the guy gets off altogether. This is a 24-year-old Navy veteran who did not get on the subway that day with the intention of killing anyone. You found somebody acting kind of crazy, that got into this chokehold. He's 26-year-old now, but he was 24 when it happened. Well, here's Eric Adams on the case.
But what do you think a conviction or a 15-year prison sentence would? It would seem like no one would step in on a situation like that again. It seems like a bad precedent, and it almost seems like, I don't know, it's a reflection of what's been going on in the city for a while, where someone trying to actually help out in a situation ends up on the losing end.
Well, I think we've always asked New Yorkers, you see something, say something, do something. And New Yorkers have always had the spirit and energy to come to their fellow New Yorkers. And we have to be honest about the severe mental health crisis that we're facing. In no way I want to do anything that's going to make the jury decision harmful in any way. He was going to be judged by a jury of his peers. They're deliberating. Let's let them do that job. But I do know we have a broken system of dealing with severe mental health illness in not only our subway system, but on our streets. I have been advocating to give us more power for involuntary removal for those who can't take care of themselves and are dangerous to others. And this young man was part of that problem. He was in a revolving door mental health system, and we have to do a better job of that. And I wish his family well, and I wish the family of Mr. Penny well as well.
Okay, so first off, again, you don't let Eric Adams completely off the hook here because it's his policies that allowed more drugs on the streets, that allowed for more criminality. He was part of the BLM thing. He was part of the defund the police thing. You then had to lower standards for people to get into the NYPD because you weren't getting the best of the best anymore. And we offered down here in Florida, remember DeSantis was offering former or current NYPD vets $5,000 bonuses if they would move down here. So we got their best. And then it degraded the entire system. So that is on you, Eric Adams. Wow, I'm getting breaking news. Literally, I think it's just happening right now. Daniel Penny is found not guilty in his New York City trial. Guys, that is a great precedent. You really need to understand. When they said to people, okay, we're going to defund the police and we're going to have lower qualified police and you're going to be able to jump turnstiles and smoke weed on the subway and all of these things, things all started getting worse. And then there was more criminality, more guys just grabbing girls and whatever it might be. So you already did one level of damage. And then the other level of damage was if nobody ever would then do a good thing. Oh, there's a guy and he might be raping that girl or he's harassing that group of kids or whatever it might be. No one would ever see something and do something because they would end up in jail. So I think a good precedent has been set here. And actually, we just got that breaking news, but I want to show you one other clip of Eric Adams because here he is talking about the weaponized DOJ and FBI, which of course, he believes is going after him in a weaponized manner, but Donald Trump as well.
And now we're hearing others are saying that Biden should pardon people because this would be difficult on their families and difficult on them, and they would have to pay high legal fees. Well, what about me? What about those mothers who are placed on FBI watch lists because they were standing up for their children?
Well, you said the other day you think that the justice system has been politicized. You believe that, don't you?
Yes, I do, with all my heart. But not only do I believe it, the president stated it. Donald Trump stated it. And countless others. You should look at some of these stories, what happened to people that stand up because of what they believe in. I believed in this city. We were going in the wrong direction with the migrants and asylum seekers. And I was very clear about that after 10 trips to Washington, D.C.
Well, given the fact that you think it's been politicized, there's some people who think that President Trump might move to pardon some of the people who were involved in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Do you think that's something he should do because it's been politicized, or he should not do?
I think that's the determination of the president. I believe it's imperative that we seek justice in our country.
Okay, I think most clear-minded people think that the Department of Justice has been weaponized. I think most people are starting to think, boy, why were they going after Donald Trump for these last 2 years, and that they probably wouldn't have done it if he decided not to vote for president. I think Eric Adams is seeing a little blowback on this as he has sort of bucked the trend of the Democrat Party. Even though he created a lot of those problems in New York, now he's coming out, you know, sort of for ICE, for deportations, for law and order. The party's not that happy with him. Next thing you know, he's under investigation by the DOJ. I don't know that we have that tied perfectly into a knot yet, but you could certainly see why he might think that. Let's jump over now to The View. But we're going to show you something kind of sane on The View. They brought in John Fetterman via Skype. John Fetterman is the Robert De Niro of this thing, in that if you saw the movie Awakenings, Robert De Niro is a mental patient who's basically comatose. They start giving him some medication. He starts waking up, realizing that life is good and he's functional again. That's sort of Fetterman right now. He had some brain damage, he's healing, and he's in essence becoming saner. It's weird, it doesn't end that well for De Niro if you didn't see the movie, so I don't know how this thing's gonna work out with Fetterman. But here's Joy Behar talking to Fetterman about Trump's trial and political motivation and selective prosecution, etc. And well, the medication's working.
It is his son, after all, and people do have sympathy for that, but a lot of people are angry with him about it. What do you say?
Oh, well, I think it's undeniable that the case against Hunter Biden was really politically motivated, but I also think it's true that the trial in New York for Trump that was political as well too. Now it's that, and in both cases, I think a pardon is appropriate, and I really think collectively, America's confidence in these kinds of institutions have been damaged by these kinds of cases, and we cannot allow these kinds of institutions to be weaponized against our political opponents. And it's very clear both trials were politically motivated and weaponized that on the other side.
They'll say that about the J6 people too, though, right? That's what they're going to say on the other side. That is weaponized also.
I'm not referring to that. I'm talking about the New York trial. And now the Democrats on our side there were some that were gleeful, calling it like, now he's a convicted felon and those things. And now for our party, we were talking about criminal justice, and we are now talking about second chances. And now all of a sudden now you're like, well, he's a convicted felon and all these things. And now clearly, again, both of those trials, the Hunter Biden one and the trial in New York for Trump, that was politically motivated, and those kinds of charges would have never been brought unless one side could realize that they could weaponize that.
Okay. All right. So before I give him too much credit, yes, the bar is low. The bar is low with these people because he's not quite right there. These things are not exactly equal. The Donald Trump trials obviously were politically motivated, which is why the second Donald Trump won, the cases all disappeared. It's why they were going after him, particularly in the New York business trials. They were going after him about loans that had been repaid with no victim. Like, they were completely absurd things that we know were politically motivated by the Joe Biden Department of Justice. To argue that the Hunter case was politically motivated, what are you saying? That Joe Biden's Department of Justice was going after Hunter Biden without warrant? Like, it's just a crazy premise. The reason I'm showing you the clip, though, is it is at least good to see a Democrat, albeit who maybe isn't the most eloquent person on the face of the planet, be able to say at least the truth about the Trump half of it. He's still getting the other half wrong, and I have no doubt if they had gotten further into the J6 stuff, he would have got that wrong too. But again, it's a low bar, and I would just say with someone like Fetterman, let's just have kid gloves with him, because it would not surprise me, mark my words right now, put a pin in this one, that within 4 years he will be a wide tent Republican. It just would not surprise me. Let's jump over to the televised mental institution known as MSNBC, because New York Times columnist Michelle Goldberg was on there, and she is pushing. She's also an MSNBC analyst. Like, what a resume this woman has. New York Times columnist, MSNBC analyst. Like, this is someone with no particular skill, and if the zombies came, should be fed to them first. Anyway, here she is saying that Biden should pardon every Democrat possible before he leaves office, because that's law and order. That's fairness, right?
And I think that there's, and I shouldn't say easy, but there's a way to do this, I think, that would make the narrative clear cut for the American people. It's not ideal to have an incoming potential head of the FBI, Kash Patel, who has published enemies lists. But one advantage of that is that he wrote a book, he has an enemies list in it, so we know exactly who he has threatened to go after without cause. Just pardon everyone on it.
Oh, just pardon everyone on it. Pardon anyone. I haven't read Kash Patel's book, but I have no doubt we'll look into this for tomorrow's show. Like, I just know, knowing Kash Patel enough, he's talking about the deep state people who have taken advantage of the deeply corrupt system. He's not just talking about going after random citizens who've done nothing. But what they want now is Biden to pardon everybody for crimes they may have committed or could commit in the future. And in essence, Joe Biden, that's what he did with Hunter Biden, right? He went, I think it's 14 years back that he can go in terms of pardoning him. So it's like, who knows what he did back then? And did any of the things that Hunter Biden did, like, say, I don't know, getting a job at Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company, where he had no qualifications to have a job in the first place, did that have anything to do with the fact that Hunter Biden's dad was at that time the vice president? It might have. So maybe actually Joe Biden was pardoning himself. There's this guy, Lenny. He calls himself Charlamagne the God, big radio host. And he is now talking about him. He's a Democrat and was a Biden supporter and everything else. But again, these people are all kind of waking up because once you get hit with the truth, you just can't stop it. That's just how the truth works. It's actually pretty cool. It's deep, it's existential, it's real. Talking about how the Dems have now lost the moral high ground.
Hunter was singled out because he broke the law. That's number one. He was singled out because he had an illegal gun and tax evasion charges, not because he was the president's son. And I honestly don't care. I just want Democrats to stop acting like they are on this moral high ground politically when they have shown us they're not, whether it's skipping the primary process when Biden stepped down and things like Biden pardoning his son. Stop acting like y'all the pure party and Republicans aren't. And it also shows me elected officials can do whatever they want as long as they have the political will and courage to do.
All right, so again, we're just showing you a couple videos of lefties, Democrats, progressives, whatever you want to call them, who are starting to wake up. Where they end up, we do not know exactly, but he is right. They have no damn right to say that they have the moral high ground. None whatsoever. And you know what's going to happen? Here's the beautiful part. What's going to happen is as these people wake up, as wokeness and all of this lunacy, this utter lunacy, which is being lifted off us right now, as it dissipates, we're going to get back to something normal again. And something normal is going to be more fun. It's going to be more real. It's going to be politically incorrect. It's going to be wide tent. And you know what it's also going to do? It's going to bring back the freaking Washington Redskins.
Woke gone wrong. The irony that they were canceling Native American culture as the DEI movement went way too far. Look, this is honoring a Blackfeet chief who was born in Montana. He's highly esteemed. The Blackfeet tribe of Montana, their current chairman and the tribal council signed a letter in strong support to bring the logo back. It honors Indian country. So we've had good discussions with the NFL and with the commanders. There's good faith negotiations going forward that's going to allow this logo to be used again. Perhaps revenues going to a foundation that could help Native Americans in sports and so forth. We're making good progress, and based on the good faith negotiations, I made a decision to support this bill yesterday in the committee.
Okay, so did you catch that? That's the owner of, I'm going to call them the Redskins, saying we're going to bring back the Redskins. And that's what people want. We all know it was all bullshit. Think how many team names. My high school was the Braves. I don't even know what they changed it to, but they changed the team name there. Think about what these freaks did. They turned the Washington Redskins into the Commanders, right? Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted it, including largely the Native American community, right? You just remove history. You just remove that these people ever existed. What else did they do? They got rid of Aunt Jemima. Is there anyone in the history of the world that was drinking, you shouldn't drink, it's full of high fructose corn syrup too, so you really shouldn't drink it, but is there anyone that was putting it on their waffles or on their pancakes and was like, look at that jolly fat black woman, I'm now racist. It's insane. It's actually insane. Uncle Ben, he had delicious white rice. They removed him from the box. Then they took the Land O'Lakes lady off. So somehow only white people can be on the products that we eat that are killing us. Something there with RFK and racism and something. It's all there. It's all there. You get it. They took all of these people off, and I get you all these people are coming back. Because you know what? They turned Aunt Jemima. Tell you, a long flight last night. They turned Aunt Jemima. Now it's the Pearl Milling Company. I'm having a delicious plate of, I've got my pancakes and my waffles and my sausage here with a little butter on top. Can I have some Pearl Milling Company syrup? No, you want Aunt freaking Jemima. But all they have left, as you know, is fear. They have fear, fear, and fear. Here I present you a fear compilation of some of the people pushing fear.
There are going to be times, potentially, when one side tries to stack the deck and lock in a permanent grip on power, either by actively suppressing votes or politicizing the armed forces or using the judiciary, the criminal justice system to go after opponents.
Where do you get the courage? Like, where do you get courage to do things? And, you know, I'm always taken aback by that question because it doesn't feel like courage to me. And by that I mean it's fear. It's fear.
You now have a president coming into office who's talking about firing squads, who's talking about running people around the country and making sure that everyone who's his enemy is going to be punished.
Who is that woman? That woman should not be allowed to be on television anymore unless you were paid to say crazy things, which is exactly what the case is. But Obama, yeah, it's you guys who tried to jail your political opponents. AOC, first off, she's like, oh, and people say I'm so brave, but I'm doing it out of fear. It's like, you fear nothing. You've had all of it. You might be a little fearful now that the grift that you have is about to come to a close, but you are not afraid that Donald Trump is going to try to jail you the way your party has been trying to jail him. And that CNN woman, just completely insane. Let's jump back just to really tie this thing together. Let's jump back to that Tim Walz clip we showed you before.
I think we're going to have to understand what type of leadership do they want. We were pledging to be inclusive. We were pledging to bring people in. Donald Trump has said that isn't what he wants. And so if that's what America's leaning towards, I guess for me, it's to understand and learn more about America, because I thought that they were going to probably move towards a more positive message.
Oh, so you wanted inclusivity and to bring people together, which, as I said earlier, it's just meaningless. Well, you know what we wanted? We wanted a whole bunch of people who were willing to discuss ideas, who were willing to talk about new ways forward, who were willing to get into the mire and the muck and realize that we all think different things and come from different places, but that if we wrap ourselves around freedom and America, that good things can happen. And Connor, do we have a video of a woman, a famous woman from the past, perhaps from the UK, who talked a little bit like this, saying something like I just illustrated? Well, then play it, would you?
But unless you have freedom of discussion over a whole society, you soon cease to have any new ideas. Don't you find that new ideas develop when you can talk about them with other people? If you can't discuss them freely because there is a correct view, you soon cease to have new ideas.
And that right there is the point of the program. If we are willing to discuss these things, then that is how we will get out of this mess. That is the point, guys. So let's take everybody that's waking up. Let's not just let everybody in because they're grifting along and they realize that their grift is up and they want to jump on board our crazy train. But the people who are authentic, who are willing to look in the mirror, we can bring them over, we can show them the right way, and our ideas are better. And since we're willing to talk about it, we can explain it to them. And generally, we happen to be a bit more patient and generous of spirit and time and everything else. And if we do all that, then the future will be bright. Not bad for totally jet lagged. We've got a post-game show, RubinReport.locals.com in about 30 seconds. Goodbye.
He calls the erectionists who stormed Capitol Hill patriots.